Y'all, sometimes the truth finds us in the most unexpected ways. Today, I want to share with you the story of Margaret Thompson, a 52-year-old high school English teacher from Marietta, Georgia, who thought she had the perfect marriage for 27 years. Until the day a flower delivery driver made one small mistake that changed everything. This is a story about how one woman turned betrayal into liberation, using nothing but her wit, southern grace, and a whole lot of patience. But most importantly, it's about discovering that sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply living your best life. So, pour yourself a sweet tea, get comfortable, and let me tell you about the day Margaret learned that white roses can reveal the darkest secrets. Margaret Thompson always considered herself blessed. She had a beautiful two-story colonial in one of Marietta's most desirable neighborhoods, complete with a wraparound porch and the kind of garden that made neighbors stop and stare. For 23 years, she'd been teaching English literature at North Cobb High School, where 3 generations of students had learned to love Shakespeare under her guidance. And then there was Robert, her husband of 27 years. Bobby, as she still called him, was the Southeast Regional Sales Manager for a major pharmaceutical company. The kind of man who remembered anniversaries, still opened car doors, and brought home flowers just because it's Tuesday. Their friends at Marietta Country Club often said they were couple goals. "Y'all still act like newlyweds," their neighbor Patricia would tease over Sunday brunch at the club. And it seemed true. Bobby never missed their Wednesday night date nights at Canoe, their favorite restaurant by the Chattahoochee River. He still left little love notes in her lunch bag. But you know what they say down south? Sometimes the prettiest flowers grow in the muddiest soil. Over the past 6 months, Margaret had started noticing things, little things. Bobby's phone was always face down now. His regional meetings seemed to require a lot more overnight trips to Birmingham and Nashville. When she'd ask about his day, his answers became as vague as Georgia morning mist. "Just work, honey. You know how demanding these hospital accounts can be. Dr. Rodriguez is expanding his practice. Needs a lot of hand-holding." Margaret chalked it up to the stress of his job. At 52, she'd learned that even the strongest marriages go through seasons. She decided to weather this one with grace, the way her mama had taught her. She had no idea that storm was about to break wide open. It was a Tuesday in early October, one of those perfect Georgia fall days when the leaves were just starting to turn and the air had that crisp bite that promised sweater weather. Margaret was grading papers in her sunroom, a cup of sweet tea sweating on the wicker table beside her, when the doorbell rang. Through the etched glass of their front door, she could see a delivery truck in the driveway. The young man on her porch was holding a stunning arrangement, 24 pristine white roses in a crystal vase that probably cost more than most people's grocery budget. "Mrs. Thompson?" "Yes, that's me. Flower delivery from Petals and Pearls. Could you sign here, please?" Margaret's heart did a little flutter. Bobby hadn't sent flowers in months, and she thought he might be trying to make up for all those late nights and canceled dinners. She signed the electronic pad and carried the vase inside, breathing in that sweet rose scent. That's when she saw the card tucked between the stems. Her hands were shaking as she opened it. "Thank you for last night, beautiful. Can't wait for our weekend getaway to Savannah. All my love, Bobby. P.S. Wear that red dress I love." Margaret's world tilted sideways. Last night, Bobby had been home. They'd watched The Voice together, and he'd fallen asleep on the couch during the commercial break. She'd even covered him with the throw blanket her mama had crocheted. And she didn't own a red dress. Never had.
Bobby knew she looked terrible in red, said it clashed with her auburn hair. With trembling fingers, she found the florist's card and dialed the number. "Petals and Pearls, this is Cheryl. How can I help you?" "Hi there. I just received a flower delivery, but I think there might be some mistake. Could you check the delivery address?" "Of course, sugar. What's the order number?" Margaret read off the number from the receipt. "Let me see. Order placed by Robert Thompson. Oh, my stars. I am so sorry. These were supposed to go to 247 Peachtree Corner Circle, Unit 12B. Our new driver must have gotten confused. Y'all have the same last name. I'll send someone right over to collect those flowers." 247 Peachtree Corners. Margaret knew that address. It was one of those upscale apartment complexes near the town center, the kind where young professionals lived. After the delivery driver retrieved the roses, Margaret couldn't focus on anything. She tried grading papers, but the words swam on the page. She attempted to start dinner prep, but found herself just staring into the refrigerator like it might hold answers. That red dress comment kept echoing in her mind. Bobby had been with someone who wore red dresses, someone who wasn't his wife of 27 years. With trembling fingers, she found the florist's card and dialed the number. The next morning, instead of heading to school, Margaret called in sick, something she hadn't done in 5 years. Then she drove to Peachtree Corners. The complex was exactly what she'd expected. Modern, pristine, with a fancy fountain and a fitness center that probably cost more than most people's rent. Building 247 was tucked in the back near the pool area. She took the elevator to the second floor and found Unit 12B. The nameplate read A. Mitchell. Margaret stood there for a full 5 minutes, her Southern upbringing warring against her need to know the truth. Mama always said you catch more flies with honey than vinegar, but she'd never mentioned what to do when you're trying to catch a cheating husband. Finally, she knocked. The door opened to reveal a petite blonde woman, maybe early 30s, wearing yoga pants and a Georgia Tech t-shirt. She was exactly the type Bobby had always claimed wasn't his type. Young, blonde, athletic. Too high maintenance, he'd always said about women like this. "Yes? Hi there. I'm Margaret Thompson. I believe you received some flowers yesterday that were meant for me by mistake." The silence stretched between them like a bridge neither wanted to cross. Then the young woman's shoulders sagged. "Oh my God. Please come in." Ashley Mitchell turned out to be a pharmaceutical sales rep. Different company, same industry. 29 years old, originally from Alabama, and moved to Georgia for a fresh start after a messy divorce. "I didn't know he was married," were the first words out of her mouth as they sat in her spotless living room. Margaret settled into the white leather chair, her mama's training keeping her spine straight and her voice level. "How long?" 5 months. He told me he was divorced, said it had been final for 2 years. Ashley told her everything. How Bobby had swept her off her feet with his charm and Southern gentleman routine. How he'd shared stories about his difficult ex-wife who was still bitter about the divorce and demanded alimony, which is why he couldn't afford to take Ashley on expensive trips yet. "He told me you were a teacher who resented his success, that you tried to take half his pension in the divorce." Margaret almost laughed. She made more money than Bobby did, and their pension plans were their own business. "This weekend in Savannah, he said it was going to be our first real romantic getaway. Said he wanted to start planning our future together." Margaret and Bobby had their 28th wedding anniversary coming up in December. She wondered what story he planned to tell Ashley. "He talks about you constantly," she said quietly. "How brilliant you are, how you inspired him to read more, how you make the best peach cobbler in 3 states. The irony wasn't lost on Margaret. Bobby had been praising his wife to his girlfriend, not realizing how much he was revealing about what he was about to lose. Now, a lesser woman might have gone straight home and thrown Bobby's belongings on the front lawn. But Margaret Thompson was a Southern woman raised by Southern women, and they knew that revenge was a dish best served with sweet tea and perfect manners. Ashley, honey, I'm going to ask you to do something that might sound strange. I need you to act like nothing has happened. Can you do that for me? Over the next 2 weeks, Margaret orchestrated the most polite investigation in Georgia history. Ashley continued seeing Bobby, but now she was paying attention to the details. She started asking questions about his ex-wife and recording his answers on her phone. Margaret, meanwhile, was doing her own detective work. She discovered